Thank you, Aaron, and good morning, everyone. For those of you who are new to Shining Mountain, welcome to Waldorf Education. And those of you who are familiar faces, welcome back. Usually at this time on a morning, I'm teaching the 12th grade at this moment, and someone else is covering for me today, but teaching the 12th grade is really one of the special pleasures of being a Waldorf teacher. I came here in 2004, but this is actually my 30th year of being a Waldorf teacher, and I've had the chance to teach first graders and 12th graders and all the grades in between along the way, and it really gives you a deeper appreciation of what's happening here as you see how the curriculum is designed to meet every age. And so today, my goal is to say a little bit about the history of Waldorf education. I don't think you can really understand it without understanding the context that it came out of, but also about the mission of Waldorf education, and especially to focus in on how a Waldorf school is fundamentally different from another kind of school. The way Rudolf Steiner interpreted education, the word education, and the meaning of what an education should be is completely different than what I had when I went to a public school, and I'm guessing probably for most of you too. So later, at the end of this, I'll actually share something with you that comes at the end of our 12th grade year, which is a tradition that began actually with Rudolf Steiner and the first graduates of a Waldorf school. And it's become part of our practice, and it's a way of connecting what we do now in schools that have changed so much in the last 90 years with what the original initiative was about and the initial ideas from Rudolf Steiner. So in order to begin, we have to think about the fact that the first Waldorf school, which are now all over the world, was in 1919 in the Waldorf Astoria cigarette factory. Many people don't know that where does Waldorf come from, or that word, and it really does not have any deeper meaning than the fact that the first Waldorf school took place in the Waldorf Astoria cigarette factory in Stuttgart, Germany. And that's where Waldorf comes from, and it has stayed with it all over the world ever since. But more than the place, the time is really an important part of the story. 1919 was just a couple of years after World War I was wrapping up. And we have to try to imagine being in Europe when that event was still living and visible in everyone's lives. The past 100 years before that had been the Industrial Revolution, the invention of the steam engine, all kinds of progress in different directions. And now, all of a sudden, we're using all of these advances to slaughter each other. And people actually wondered, what does the future for mankind hold? It wasn't hard to imagine that things might not last much longer. And as we know, they got worse before they got better, especially in Europe. So when Rudolf Steiner was asked by Emil Molt, who was the owner of the cigarette factory, to start a school for the children of the workers there, he knew he was speaking to someone who had very definite ideas about education. Steiner started speaking publicly about education in 1906, and he voiced a very common theme. One that said that really, unless education changes, we shouldn't expect society to change. Seems like a pretty common thought to us today, but really nothing outside of Waldorf education has changed much in terms of what education was seen to be then and how it's seen to be today. But he said that really, unless education begins with an accurate picture of what a human being is, we can't expect it to do very much other than training of various kinds. Because really there were two streams leading into that time. One was the one of technology, and with this came the view that human beings are really just kind of different kinds of machines. Really, and you hear this expression all the time today, that we're really just a machine. And we're run by our computer up here. And this vision of a human being as being something of an inanimate object. The other stream came from Darwin. And Darwin, again, tremendously important scientist, fundamental truths involved with his work. Yet one of the results that came from Darwin's view was human beings are just animals. And we exist in a world of competition, and those who are the fittest survive. And that ethic had worked its way into society, so that really the strongest would survive. And the strongest in World War I meant those who had more weapons, more people that could be mowed down in battle. And it was a picture that didn't offer much hope for the future between the animal and the machine and the combinations of those two. So Steiner said, first of all, we have to begin with an accurate picture of what a human being is. And a human being is not just a physical body. And here's the place where Waldorf education begins to separate from more traditional kinds of education. Because Steiner laid out a very detailed picture of what a human being is and how we develop in the world. And just from that, we've already had, that statement carries the beginning of what a Waldorf school is. It's based on the idea that a human being is a complex being, actually a fourfold being, in its most basic form, the way Steiner would describe it, and that we all have a particular path in life in front of us. It's not something to be imprinted on us. It's not job training. It's not socialization training. It's not citizenship training to make you a good, quiet citizen that doesn't rock the boat at all. But rather, you come into the world with a destiny, and education should be designed to help you discover your path. That's very different. That's very different. As a teacher, when I think of how my teachers looked at me and what their goals were in relation to me, none of them were thinking this person has a unique destiny and it's my task to help this person uncover it. I mean, there you have a very different point of view about what should happen in a school. So I want to describe, and this is fairly unusual for an introductory lecture, but I'm going to go a little further than usual in it and describe what the fourfold human being is. Because I think really, without understanding that, you might never get how different what this is how it's different from other paths. But with it, you can see that the curriculum follows this concept. And without it, how limited a picture it is. So I'm going to try something new. I found this out in I haven't used one of these whiteboards before, but let's see how it works. See if you can read my writing. What I do with the 12th graders most days is we begin by saying, when I hand back papers, what does this say? And then sometimes I don't know. I have to kind of piece it together. Anyway, the ideas that I'm about to explain are different in the sense that Rudolf Steiner gave the foundations of these aspects of the human being. We all see the results of them. And the first one is the notion that human beings in connection with the mineral kingdom have a physical body. We are obviously different than rocks because we have more than just a physical body. So that part is not too hard to understand, but then we get to what Rudolf Steiner in other places referred to as the life body. And in connection with the world of plants, we have a life body. We have a body of formative forces is another way he describes it, which takes the physical elements that we are made up of and we will return to at some point, but forms them into a living thing. And so he said that the life body doesn't actually appear in its full, free form until about the change of teeth, around 7. And he said when the physical body is fully articulated during those first 7 years, then the ether body is ready for another task that it is involved in. Beyond forming the physical body, it also becomes the foundation of memory. So here we have an important addition that comes around the age of 7. Doesn't mean that children can't remember things before that, but their memory is different from the time of 7 on. It can actually, as Steiner said, be worked with and developed at that point, and shouldn't really be messed with much before that. Because when you go into this realm and you start using capacities that are meant to come later, you're actually stealing forces from the physical body. And Steiner described in an uncanny way our modern medical situation in the world when he said, if education continues as it does, around the age of 40 or 50, there's going to be widespread outbreaks of diabetes. He said that in 1910. And what are we seeing today? Well, you wouldn't think it had something to do with education. And it's not a matter of being taught to eat the right foods. It's much deeper than that. It's something that actually was lost when it should have been gained back here in this period. So, in connection with the plants, we have the life body. And then we see in relation to the animal kingdom, we also share consciousness. Now, Steiner also gave the terms ether body or etheric body for the life body, or the astral body for consciousness. But in connection with animals, we can look, if you look at a tree and look at an animal, and this is a great source of meditation even, what's the difference? What capacities are in the one that do not exist in the other? You start to get an impression of what an astral body is. This body of consciousness, mobility, that allows us to be now responsive to the world around us in a way that a plant cannot, as far as we can currently measure. And he said the consciousness body in a human being appears at puberty. It's not that we weren't conscious until that time, but at that stage, that body is freed from its tasks in building the body, and now it's ready to be part of the thinking apparatus of a human being. That before that time, children kind of live in the shadow of thinking. They mostly think what people around them think. They're not really penetrating the world. And that's perfectly normal, that they should be that way. But around the age of puberty, we can see again, it follows a physical change. When the astral body comes in, children are different. You watch 4th and 5th graders run outside. It's not always easy to tell whether it's a boy or a girl in 4th or 5th grade. They kind of float. They don't even seem to have bones inside of them. But 7th and 8th graders, they don't float anymore. The bones are visible. The muscles are having a new relationship with those bones. And now, instead of the younger child, now we have the... It's a whole new... It begins with a physical change, but it becomes a soul change. We see something different that's there that just wasn't there before in the same way. And Steiner described how once that physical body gets weight, and he describes German students in 1910, 1920 in a way that we might describe adolescents today, when he describes this change of the lengthening of the arms and the kind of loping gait that starts to develop. He said they feel that weight, and that weight awakens them to the principles of mechanics that are not only present in the world around them, but in their own bodies. And now is the time for logic. Now is the time there's a whole new capacity of thinking that comes around the age of 12 to 14. Our curriculum changes around 6th grade to begin to meet that change, and then continues on into high school. And then finally, Steiner describes a capacity which he says is completely unique to human beings. And this is the ego. This is not Freud's ego. This is the simplest way to define it would be to call it individuality. When you look at a field of golden retrievers running around together, it's not easy, without being the owner of one of them, to say that they are fundamentally different from each other. They have what Steiner would call a group ego, or a group soul that they live in. And that's the limit of animal life. Their goal is not to become individuals that are different from all other golden retrievers. Even though there are characteristic differences of your pet, and people will swear, my golden retriever is different. The reality is, they're not different in the same way that you and I are different from each other. You have a destiny that is different from mine. And so with this ego, this is around 21. And it's often people can reflect back on your own life. What happened around the age of 21 for you? Were there particular things that you can look back on and say, at that point, and sometimes it's an event that comes to you from the outside that just changes everything for you, but often it's just a kind of state of being in which you feel differently in relation to the people around you than you did before. I remember when I was a 16, 17-year-old teenager in school, I didn't exist if I wasn't with my boys. I grew up with about 4 or 5 friends. We were together from the time we were 7 all the way through high school. We played football together, baseball. We did everything together every day. And all of a sudden, when I was around 21, I started to realize, I don't think I'm going to go see them tonight. And I was whole without them in a way that I hadn't been before. And here we see the transition from the group soul to the individual ego. So this is the picture of the human being that Rudolf Steiner put forward when he was talking to the first teachers of the Waldorf school back then, and said, we have to base an education on a real picture of what a human being is. If you start here and you end here, you're going to end up with World War II. If you can have things like this that enter into the education and the plan for education, we can start to change the world. And for a guy that was about to start a school that didn't exist yet, that now has tens of thousands of students all over the world, there are now over 100 Waldorf schools in China. I mean, it's becoming exploding over there. And they're in pretty much every culture in the world. He's right. It has happened. That the Waldorf schools, and even the fact that Waldorf schools are affecting public schools now. Many public schools are designed, charter schools, to imitate the Waldorf method. It's called a Waldorf-inspired school because it really can't be a full Waldorf school if it's not an independent school. Once the state gives you money, they want things in return, and you are no longer a free school to create your own curriculum. But it shows it's important enough that they have decided we see the values of this and we'd like to have our own. Is question?
I'm just curious how Waldorf got into China with the anthroposophic underpinning.
Well, that's a whole other story. That would be a good question. The question is, how did Waldorf education and the background of anthroposophy, make its way into China? And the answer to it is, it hasn't officially made it into China. China, as I've heard described to me by people who have been involved in this, they have the green light, the yellow light, and the red light for initiatives that are not fully sanctioned by the Communist Party. And Waldorf education now has the yellow light, which means you can continue to grow until we see problems with what this is. And there's one school in one city that has 8 kindergartens in its Waldorf school. I mean, it's a massive school. High schools have not really taken hold yet, and now Chinese students are coming here to go to high school. We have a Chinese student in our high school now, and probably another one for next year. And some of them, a lot of Waldorf schools now have 5, 6 Chinese students attending. Anyway, now I want to go through how does this then translate into a curriculum for a school. And first of all, we have this period of 1 through 7, which we think of as pre-kindergarten and kindergarten. And in that period of time, children have a particular style of learning. And their particular style of learning is imitation. Steiner describes how a young child is so devoted to the world around him. It begins in trust. It begins with love for the people who provide all that child's needs every day. That as the child begins to stand up and speak, that trust extends out to the world around them. And how do they express this love? By imitating. I love this so much, I'm going to do it myself. There's no thought process. It's just an immediate connection. So, in the kindergarten years, children, the environment is very, very important. You walk into the Waldorf kindergarten and there is nothing there that is not supposed to be there. We hope. Maybe the broom gets left out in a place from the night before or something, but really everything is very consciously chosen and prepared to be there. So the children can see people using those things and imitate them. And the image Steiner gave for the kindergarten teachers was the priestesses. He said these should be the oldest teachers in the school, should be with the youngest children. They are the ones that have transformed their bodies to the fullest extent, these bodies, to the point that they can be emulated by young children. Their thoughts, their feelings can live into the atmosphere around them in a way that is safe for children. So in this period of time, when they're building their physical bodies, obviously they're meant to play. Their play is serious. It's been said by many observers, play is the work of the child. They take it to the way that later we look at our work in the world. We forget the play part sometimes. But 1 through 7, it's really just meant to be a time of play and discovering of the world, articulation of the physical senses, and building that relationship with the world around you through trust. Trust is very, very important. If the trust isn't there, you have the beginning of learning problems. That's not the only source of it, but that can be a pretty serious source of it. When that feeling of, wait a minute, where am you thrown back into oneself, then it stops this natural flow relationship with the environment. And of course, people should not be sitting, what happened to my 4-year-old the other day? I know this is going to affect his whole life. No, it's not like that. Things happen. This is a world in which, unpredictable things are happening all the time. But the point is, the gesture, the mood, the general climate of the child's life is one of love and trust. So around 7 years old, the second teeth come. According to Rudolf Steiner, that's the signal a stage is done. The next stage has begun. Now this changes. Some children 6, some 8. Some of them are ready when their teeth maybe haven't fully changed yet in ways. Those things, it's not like right on the moment. But at the age of 7, we now go to, and what I'm going to shift from age to grades 1 through 5. Because I would say that in the whole of Waldorf education, even given that that based on a view of the human being like this is already completely different, the key difference between what we do happens and other schools happens in these grades right here. And it has to do with this very view of what a human being is. Because traditional education eliminates this and immediately goes to the consciousness body, the astral body, and teaching to the intellect in first grade. You have expectations. Children are now being taught to read in kindergarten. They get to first grade, and it's time that if you don't have these capacities, there must be something wrong with you. We separate you from other people because we're testing to make sure that you're developing in the way you're supposed to. This is a crime. This is a tragedy because it's ignoring what a human being really is. And yet, it's so customary. We think because everyone's doing it, it must be a good thing. And yet, every year, people walk around going, why are schools so messed up? Well, no one thinks about changing them in a fundamental way. It's, we can't do that because we don't even know what he's talking about when he says things